Tales from the Lot, Episode 5. Maybe U2 does that, but I doubt it. My guest is Cameron Patrick, here to talk about July 4th, 1990 at the Sandstone Auditorium in Bonner Springs, Kansas. Let's do it. Hi, welcome to Tales from the Lot. My name is Will. Today my guest is Cameron Patrick. We're here to talk about July 4th, 1990 at the Sandstone Amphitheater in Kansas. How's it going, Cameron?
Good. How are you, Will?
Good. Thanks for being on here. I appreciate it. This Sandstone Amphitheater, was this your first Grateful Dead show, or had you been to some before this?
It was my sixth show. It had been about a year after my first show. My first show was Deer Creek in '89. I grew up in Indianapolis area, about 20 minutes away from Deer Creek, and enjoyed that show so much in '89 that a friend of mine and I went to Alpine. Immediately after, hopped on the bus the next day, and then saw a couple shows in the fall tour in '89, and a couple shows in the spring tour in April of '90. And so I'd say six. I guess it was the seventh show for me.
Nice. How many did you get to altogether?
48 Dead shows and one JGB show.
Nice. I also grew up in central Indiana in Anderson, really close to Deer Creek, and I was not there for '89 or '90, but I made it there for '91. That was my first experience.
Okay.
And then got out of Indiana as quickly as I could afford it. Cool. So what were you listening to, like growing up? What were your musical roots, and how did you get to the Grateful Dead?
Oh, I was more of a metal. Well, I had varied interests. My mom would listen to a lot of Motown kind of stuff, so that was always playing in the house, and enjoyed it and still do. But I listened to more. My older brother, his collection of records is more what I listened to, which was more along the lines of Alice Cooper, Led Zeppelin, Bachman Turner Overdrive, that type of thing.
Nice.
But I also had really liked the Southern rock of the 70s, which is what they call country now, I guess. It's more of the Charlie Daniels and Ozark Mountain Daredevils and Molly Hatchet. Molly Hatchet was my first concert ever in '78.
Wow, nice. Do you see them like Market Square or somewhere like that?
At the Indiana State Fair. The infamous
State Fair, okay.
Indiana State Fair, yes.
So how did you get to the Grateful Dead from all that?
Well, my sister and I, in the late '80s, we worked at the same place, the Downtown Hotel in Indianapolis, and one of our other coworkers was our roommate. The three of us had an apartment together, and she was from New York, and she was the one who always tried to get me and my sister to go to Dead shows. Thought we would really enjoy it, the music and the scene, and so she was the one who convinced us to go in '89, the first year Deer Creek was open, and they were there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, she had a real "I told you so" moment after that first one.
I feel like all the people who get us there have that for a minute, and then we get assimilated into the whole scene, and then it's just on from there. But that's cool. And so your sister went with you, and do you have some friends also, or
yes,
crew?
Actually, that first show, we've got a good friend who works for the construction company that built Deer Creek, and that first season of Deer Creek, that construction company had a box, and so that our first show was quite unusual. That there were 12 of us that went in 2 limos and got dropped off right at the front door and had box seats for it. Yeah. So
that's a great story.
It's like an experience I never had at any other Dead show.
Yeah, that's first class, man. Dropped off right at the front. I've seen the limo line there. Never been through it, but I know what you're talking about. That's awesome. That's awesome. Did you? Okay, so you got your tickets to that. That's, man, so much dancing space in those boxes.
Yes.
Like
yes.
you're not all crushed up and all that. Nice. So and then okay, so how did you end up out in Kansas? You were just on tour and seeing
So
some
yeah,
shows
so
through
then
'90.
by that time, summer of '90, we were big fans, and I had gone through the catalog, had let knew all the albums and all the songs, had lots of bootlegs added to my collection by that time. And like I say, my sister and I were living together, so through the years, my sister and I were traveling companions, all from '90 through '95. We went to, of the 48 shows that I went to, she was my companion for probably 41 of those.
That's nice. Somebody you trust on the road with you.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So she was my companion going to Bonner Springs, Kansas, that 4th of July. I was working nights at that time, and so I got off work about 3 a.m. on the 4th of July after working the night of the 3rd, and she and I hit the road immediately, and this is the better part of the story. I mean, I know the podcast is for talking about the shows, but for this
it's for
particular
all
story,
of it.
it's the events around the show that made this show so special to me. Because she and I, by 7 a.m., we were passing through St. Louis, and on the belt outside St. Louis, we were passing a pickup truck, and in that pickup truck, there were 2 guys holding up a sign from inside the pickup truck saying, "Can you take us to the show?" And she and I were driving a minivan, which was a rented minivan, because neither of our cars at that time could handle a long road trip. And so we had this rented minivan, which we had taped a Grateful Dead sticker up in the back window.
Okay.
And so these guys saw that sticker, and they held up the sign, and so we did. Turns out they were doing the whole tour, hitchhiking through the whole tour. Wow. And they were in this truck because that guy had given him a ride, but he was getting ready to take a different road. And so we all pulled over to the side of the road, and they hopped out of his truck and into our rented van. And we've been great friends with both of them since that moment. Still are to this
awesome.
day.
That's awesome. Where are they from?
From Delaware, Newark, Delaware.
Okay.
And so they eventually became the Flying Grilled Cheese Brothers, selling grilled cheeses on lot through the whole tour. Every summer tour, they would do the whole tour hitchhiking, and
wow.
and eventually did grilled cheeses. But at that time, that was their first tour of doing that, and they were going to do stir fry that tour, and they found that it was much easier as hitchhikers to go with the grilled cheese rather than the stir fry. But they were doing stir fry, so we made a grocery stop for them before we got to the show. We got there, and they collected up their stuff and thanked us and went on their way. We exchanged numbers, but didn't know if we would really see them again or hear from them again. But it turns out one of them left his wallet in the van. And with all of his money for the tour, all of his tickets, everything, and we didn't discover that until we were about halfway back to Indianapolis the next day after the show.
Oh.
And so we did hook up with them. We tried to hook up with them in Louisville, which was a show or two after Kansas, and did not. But they ended up coming to our place for the Deer Creek shows, which were a couple weeks down the road. He just struggled by until then, and they came and stayed with us for Deer Creek, and then came back every year and stayed with us for Deer Creek, and we'd go stay with them for East Coast shows, and it evolved into a lifelong loving friendship. And then where it goes from there is one of them, his girlfriend at the time, is his wife now. They are still together. And she didn't get to meet her until 92 or 93. Met her on the East Coast when we went out there for some shows. And her best friend since childhood was a woman who became my wife eventually. that we, the Grateful Dead, went through their years, and then Jerry died, and they would still come and visit for the Further Festival or for the other ones. But eventually the festivals of 2000 came around, and we started going to Bonnaroo, my sister and I, and went in 2004, and then we would meet them there as well. They would come, our friends from the road, and finally in 2007, Bonnaroo, my wife Jenny came along with them to Bonnaroo that year, and that's the first time I met them. And after, we had been friends with them for all this time, 14, 15 years at this point, and my wife Jenny had been friends with them her entire life, had been roommates with them in college, but the two of us had never met through them, had never crossed paths until 2007. We met and met at Bonnaroo, and were married 8 months later in February, and we've been together ever since.
That's fantastic. That's one of the things that I hear a lot associated with the Grateful Dead is, the people you meet, you just stay friends for forever. I mean, like, even the people you don't know, you're already friends with at a Dead show, so, but yeah, it's come up a lot. I met this guy at Rosemont, or I met this guy at Shoreline, and we would always make sure to find each other when we were back there, and just the lifelong friendships that happen out of this. It's not uncommon, and it's very cool, I think.
I do too. Yeah, just to know that I would not have the loving life with my wife that I have today if I had not picked up those hitchhikers at 7 a.m. on the 4th of July, 1990.
So let's talk about the show.
Okay.
So you got there, and evidently it was hot as
oh my goodness,
hot as could be.
Oh my goodness, it was so hot. it was I think 101 at showtime, and the asphalt parking lot there at Bonner Springs, it had to be 120 in the lot. It was awful.
What kind of venue was it? A pavilion or what?
A shed type amphitheater. I'm not sure of the age of it. It's Bonner Springs Amphitheater was what it was called then. No sponsorship. But it to me, having been at Deer Creek with it being all brand new at that point, this Bonner Springs seemed to be much older to me. Seemed to not have any newfangled amenities.
Yeah. From the little bit I read about it, it seemed to be pretty small, and the stage was actually kind of small, which it seemed. I saw some pictures. Somebody had taken some photos and posted them online as I was preparing for this, and it looked like the band all had matching shades, and there was just no protection for them. It looked like, because it was like the cover of the stage seemed sort of small.
Yes, agreed.
From the angle I could see. I couldn't see the whole thing. Yeah, I couldn't see the whole thing, but there was a picture of the band, and it just like they were right in the sunlight.
Yes.
And I noticed at the end of the set, Bobby's like, "We'll be back in just a little bit when the sun goes down." that was his line at the end of the first set, which I thought was kind of funny. But yeah, you could definitely tell. During the first set, they were struggling a little bit. There was some lyrical things, and there were some moments, but you could tell that maybe they were uncomfortable as they were getting through that first set a little bit.
Yes, it was fun for the crowd. I think that they opened with Cold Rain and Snow. A little bit of trolling there.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, and it was decent song choices. I mean, Walk of Blues was good. Half Step. Actually, that Cold Rain and Snow, I did notice something. Jerry flipped the lyrics a little bit and said, "I've been trouble all my life," which I thought was kind of funny. Like instead of "she's been trouble all my life," he says, "I've been trouble all my life." I thought was cool, and maybe he should have kept that later or something. Just for the fun of it, I don't know. But the Queen Jane was smoking. It was a good set, but you could tell that it was a little disjointed sometimes. Like maybe they were just not as comfortable as they could be.
I agree. It was fun for me though, being when I said my 7th show and a year into my Grateful Dead fandom. There were lots of songs that I knew at that point, but had not seen them play live. And this show, it was like almost every song in this show were it was just one after another that, hey, it was my personal first time seeing most of the songs on this show. And
right.
Really enjoyed that.
Nice. And then, I think the second set was definitely a little more solid, and I mean, even from the Victim of the Crime, where there are people who like that song and people who don't. I sort of like this song, but at the end of that, there's this moment where Jerry is just. I wrote a note that said "gooey oozing," like it just like this music was just gooey oozing out of him. Like it wasn't really with the time, and it was just sort of like in and out. And there's just this moment right at the end of Victim of the Crime when Jerry's doing something above the textures that are going on behind him, and that just caught me when I heard that. I was like, wow, that was unique, and it just sounded gooey for some reason to me. And maybe it was the heat.
Maybe so. I think it's neat too that it's the only show that I saw them do Victim of the Crime into Foolish Heart rather than the other way around. It seemed like they pretty quickly switched it to having Foolish Heart be a regular opener and would go into Victim of the Crime out of Foolish Heart. And this, the only time I can remember that they did Victim of the Crime into Foolish Heart, and I think, personally, I think it works better. I was always disappointed after that the order had been switched.
Yeah, I kind of prefer Victim. I like the darkness of it and just the whole, I don't know, it just has such a full sound when they play it. And, but I like Foolish Heart too. But yeah, I agreed with you. The Victim first as an opener works for me anytime. And then Just a Little Light. That's the one song. I never got to see Brett, and that's like the one song that I'm sad that I never got to hear. I mean, Never Trust a Woman is cool, and We Can Run is cool, but it would have been nice to catch Just a Little Light sometime. That was a neat song, and it was sort of different the way they hang in those parts, and bring it into the Just a Little Light. I guess this was less than a month before we lost Brett.
Right.
This show was, so this maybe the last one. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look, but
it was. Yeah, no. This.
Who knows?
This, I think, I'd have to go back and look, but I think this was the first show of the summer tour that year, and
oh, okay.
it went on through the rest of July, and
Yeah.
Deer Creek was
And then they
later,
had the break
and
until...
Tinley Park, Illinois, which we did go to those shows too. I think were Brent's last shows.
Yep. And then, I unfortunately I never got to see Brent, but my first show had Hornsby, so I was kind of glad about that. Not Brent, but still pretty good. But like the Scarlet and the Fire mid-set, and this whole second set was very MIDI heavy. If you like, there's a lot of trumpets, and a lot of oboes, and a lot of like crystal bell sounds, and it's you could tell that the tech was new for them, and they were just really trying to see where it fit. And I felt like this night in particular, there was a lot of MIDI going on, and from the solo in Scarlet to late in the Fire in the Mountain, and then maybe even into the drums. I wasn't really certain. It gets kind of raging where they're locked in, and then it goes into this part for a little while where it sounds like, I don't know if it's some sort of metal drums, weird cymbals, bells. I'm not sure what it was, but likely Mickey is tapping out some sort of rhythm on these, and it goes on for a while, and it kind of progresses and turns into a thing. But I never could tell if it was real or if they were triggers, since everybody else was playing MIDI. So I'm gonna have to try to find a video or something of the show somewhere, figure out what he was doing back there, because it was really cool sounding, and he locked into it. Sometimes in drums they'll sort of play it and it'll ooze or change kind of rapidly as they keep going, but he just locked into this thing on these very odd sounding sort of bells or metal drums of some sort.
Agreed. Yeah, the Scarlet Fire is still to this day, I think that on tape, that's my favorite Scarlet Fire. And
yeah, it's definitely cooking. I mean, they lock in, and that it's just churning that rhythm.
Yeah,
it's a good version for sure.
It may not be the best, but there's always the emotional attachment to versions that you were there for. You have the specific point in time memories flashing through your head when you listen to a recording of it.
Hey now, do you have a great story about a Grateful Dead show you were at? I'd love to hear it and maybe have you on the podcast. Send me an email at will@talesfromthelot.org and let me know what show you would like to talk about and what made it so special to you.
And that is really part of it. I mean, the feeling in the room is as much a part of it, and whatever energy they're getting back and giving out, and whatever's going on in the world that day is all part of it. So that attendance bias is a real thing, and it's tangible, I feel like.
Agreed.
It's yeah. And okay, so drums, space, cool, and then the wheel. Never complain about that. Nice spacey long intro on it, and before they get locked in.
Yeah.
Give me some lovin'.
The wheel is one that became my sister and I's road song. That's that song, and specifically that version is what we would put on when we're leaving the house for a tour for forever after.
It's the one the good luck song to start off with.
Yes.
So this was, you said this is that the first show. How many did you see on this leg? You left from work and Indian drove out there. Did you circle back through Louisville?
Well, that was the crazy thing. That no, I only said this show because I then had to be back at work at 4 p.m. on the 5th of July. So it was a whirlwind. Yeah, and I had not slept from the time I left work at 3 a.m. on the night of the 3rd, morning of the 4th, until the time I got back to work at 4 p.m. on the 5th.
You're a madman.
I had not slept. Well, I was young. I was young then.
Yeah, true.
Easier to do when you're young,
I guess.
But then did go see the Louisville show, which was a few days later, and then saw the Deer Creek shows of that tour and the Tinley Park, Illinois shows at the end of the tour.
You caught a fair chunk of Brent there at the end.
Yeah, I was happy to.
Yeah, he's my favorite keyboardist for sure that they had.
Agreed. Yeah, his vocals added so much. I mean, I loved his playing, but the vocals added such a different layer than any of the other keyboardists did.
Yeah, the color and just pushing Jerry too. I mean, you know that those two were tight, and you know you watch the videos and they're just grinning at each other. You know, tried to outdo each other, and really just kicking it. And some of that, it's sad that some of that was lost. But you know, I feel like Hornsby had a little bit of that he could push him. When he moved on, it's, you know, I don't think that there was somebody there that was really pushing Jerry to really you know, do better every night. And, you know, my opinion.
Agreed. It was I with Bruce. I really liked the grand piano, the layer that he added, and thought it was better than Vince alone once he got there. I thought that. But I did see Vince's first show. That was poignant for me too, to have saw Brent's last show and then saw Vince's first show, which was only like 6 weeks later. And I really enjoyed Vince in those early days before Brent came along. I mean, before Bruce came along, because I think he felt, I think once Bruce was there, I think Vince felt like his role was diminished. And then once Bruce left, Vince never really came back to where he was before Bruce came along. I think those few months before Bruce joined them, when Vince was alone and brand new, I really liked the tones that he added at that time.
I'm gonna have to go back and listen to those pre-Bruce shows, because I'm not certain that I have, and I know I've listened to a ton of the Bruce era and then saw a bunch of Vince only shows, and I mean, what you described, how could you not feel that way if Bruce Hornsby comes and sits in front of you and does what he does? And you know, Vince was good, and you know, maybe I think it was sort of a quick decision. I mean, I'm not sure Vince was the right fit, and I think they were a little hasty about it personally. But you know, I love Vince. Going down, you know, glad to see him. I like Samba in the Rain. I'm not sure about Way to Go Home, but you know, I feel like they should have waited a little bit, and not even necessarily waited, but given it a little more time to find somebody who would you know, gel and push Jerry a little bit more. But it turned out
I liked the it was Richfield, Ohio, September 7th or 8th or something along in there, 1990 was Vince's first shows, and whichever was the first show, they played a bird song late in the first set, and Vince really shined. I mean, that was the first point in the show that he really got to shine, and he did. I really liked that version of bird song, which in Vince's first show. And Jerry introduced him at the end of Birdsong, and he got quite a rousing reception after playing that song. Yeah,
I'm gonna have to check that out. You said that was at Richfield?
Yes, Richfield, early September 1990.
Did you go to Richfield in '93, the spring '93 that got canceled?
Did not. Never went to the spring shows. Went to all the Richfield fall shows, but not the spring shows.
Gotcha. I went, and my buddy was driving this little tiny Cavalier, and it was a blizzard. I mean, it was just coming down like, I don't know, 10 inches an hour or something stupid like that. And Central Indiana over to Richfield's not all that far, so we were going to do it. And the whole way there, we're listening to the radio and the closing roads, and somehow we finally make it there, right as they announce that they're canceling the show because of the blizzard. Like, oh, and
now you have to drive back.
What turned? No. Well, we had tickets for the next night also,
okay.
So, and a hotel room, so we were good to go. But honestly, though, I'm almost certain I had more fun that night than I would have had the show actually happened, because where we were staying at was like, we were like the Motel 6 or something, and then there was a Red Roof Inn, and then there was a Holiday Inn, and then there was something else over here, and it was all people for the show. And so it was just like the biggest riot party in the middle of all this, and a blizzard, and it was really fun, and I don't remember a whole lot of it other than going out and helping my buddies push a cop car out of a snowdrift, and he was really grateful and really weirded out by us. But we offered to help, so he was great. He was grateful, but we got him out of the drift. And then we ended up going to the show the next night. It went on, and that was the first I Fought the Law, and that was supposedly because they were shut down the night before they learned that song to play it. But overall was not the greatest show. It was one of those slow Carinas, and like just everything
Yes.
was sort of slow all night long, and ended with I Fought the Law, and we're like, oh, at least we had a good party last night. Did you ever make it up to like the Rosemont or any of that stuff too?
Only for my one Jerry Garcia band show was at the Rosemont. That's the only time I've been there.
Yeah. And okay, so you were from Central Indiana. You probably saw lots of kick-ass other shows at Deer Creek as well. I mean,
I did.
I mean, everybody
Yeah.
through like 89, 90, 91, every single band was coming through there. So I saw
I saw
so
hundreds
much.
of shows there at Deer Creek.
Yeah. Do you remember the old $20 carload shows?
Yes,
Yeah,
sure.
just like I had a friend who had one of those big old Blazers, and we'd stuff like 10 people in there, and I'll pay a couple of bucks to go see like Bad Company or somebody. It's too bad we
Yeah,
can't do that anymore.
I had a friend who, at that time, there was a hotel in Indianapolis that was good 10 miles, 15 miles from Deer Creek, but it was at that time was the closest hotel to Deer Creek, and it's where all the bands stayed. And I had a friend who was the bell captain at that hotel, and that summer, we went to hundreds of shows at Deer Creek, but one summer went to like every single show because he got free tickets to every show that whole summer, and got backstage passes for a lot of them. Had backstage passes for the Dead that year through him.
Nice.
And that was my only Dead show with backstage passes, which really didn't mean much because by the time they let us in backstage after the show, the band was already gone, and there was just some sorry soggy leftovers of a banquet table that we munched on, but there was nothing really to the backstage area,
Yeah.
but still got that backstage pass,
Yeah.
to put on the wall.
Heck yeah.
But yeah, that had so much fun at Deer Creek. Saw many shows, and
Yeah.
my wife and I went back there just a few weeks ago for the Fish shows at
Oh,
Deer
very
Creek,
cool.
and that was the first time she had been to Deer Creek, and my first time back there in 12 years or more, 15 years. I've been here in Tennessee for 12, and yeah, it was a lot of fun being back there,
Nice.
having all the memories.
Last time I was there was for Fish in '96. I don't think I saw anything else after that. And then soon after I moved out here to Colorado, where I live 10 minutes from Dick's, which is kind of nice.
Very nice.
Yeah. Catch those shows all the time.
We like
So,
Dick's.
yeah, totally. Yeah, it was it was pretty fun this year, for sure. Are you seeing Dead and Company around these days?
Have not seen. The only time I've seen Dead and Company was when they did Bonnaroo.
Gotcha. Yeah, the only time I've seen him, and it was sort of a hybrid. Didn't know what was happening, but I went to the Jerry Garcia 75th birthday party at Red Rocks, and they had the remnants of the Jerry Garcia acoustic band, and JGB played with Melvin, and then the headliner was going to be Bob solo. Is what it was going to be. So he comes out and he does, and it was right around the time of the Blue Mountain record. And he comes out and he did 1 or 2 songs off of that. And I was like really stoked because I love that record. And then he started doing a bunch of Jerry tunes, which that makes sense. It's Jerry's birthday. And he invites out O'Teal, who had played with JGB. And then John Mayer comes out, and it just turns into a Dead and Company show at the end, sort of unannounced. So that was my lone time kind of seeing that band. But yeah, it was cool, and it was sort of unexpected, and it was all right. I don't love John Mayer. That's my deal. I mean, his playing is good, but his voice sort of gets me.
I'm the same way. I'm the same way. I think he's a fabulous guitarist, but I just don't like to listen to him sing.
No, I much prefer somebody in that slot like Warren Haynes or anybody. But it was fun at Red Rocks that night because it was unexpected and sort of a treat, and we'd heard so much good music that it was just like an all-day event, and it was a nice way to cap it off, for sure.
For sure.
So, okay,
for sure.
So this July 4th 90 show, I see why that one was special for sure. I mean, it really, the Grateful Dead is one of those things that will really change your path in life in very odd sort of ways. And I know that my life would be a lot different if I hadn't went to that Grateful Dead show the first time. And if you hadn't picked up those 2 people, it's just amazing that a band can affect somebody's trajectory so much.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, maybe U2 does that, or Mariah Carey, but I doubt it. This band really changes people's lives, and it's pretty amazing.
It's so true, and it did. Picking up the Hitchhikers on 4th of July did start that trajectory that led to my marriage.
Yeah.
But even before that, like you said, the very first notes of my very first show, which was Bertha, is what they opened up with at that '89 Deer Creek show, and just before the music started, before the show, just looking around, enjoying the crowd, the people, mingling, how excited and happy everyone was, and then the band comes on stage, and everybody comes to attention, and the excitement is palpable, and the electricity starts going through the air, and those first notes of Bertha came, and the whole, the whole 25,000 strong, massive, tie-dyed color, bouncing and jumping and loving that moment. It was immediate. It was like, this is something I want to be a part of.
Yeah, I know that exact feeling of standing at Deer Creek for your first show, and for me it was a half step, just and just everybody that was just so much different than anything else I'd ever experienced. And
Right.
I wanted to have that all the time.
Agreed. Yeah.
For sure. All right. Well, Cameron, thank you for being on today. I appreciate you coming on and talk about your fantastic journey.
Well, it's been great fun. It's good to meet you, Will.
Right. You as well.